computer built 2,000 years ago, a battery from ancient Baghdad, a vending machine in ancient Egypt, Roman nanotechnology. These aren't science fiction, they're real artifacts archaeologists actually discovered. 6 ancient inventions so advanced they seem like time travelers from the future. This is how they really worked and why they prove ancient civilizations were far more sophisticated than we ever imagined. In 132 AD, Chinese polymath Zhang invented something remarkable, the world's first seismoscope, a device that could detect earthquakes hundreds of miles away. Picture a bronze vessel about 6 feet tall, shaped like a jar. On the outside, 8 dragon heads face outward in the cardinal directions, north, south, east, west, and the 4 in-betweens. Each dragon holds a bronze ball in its mouth. Below each dragon sits a bronze toad with its mouth open. This wasn't decorative, it was a precision instrument. Inside the vessel was a heavy pendulum suspended at the center. When seismic waves from a distant earthquake traveled through the ground, the entire bronze vessel would receive a slight vibration. But here's the genius. Because of inertia, the heavy pendulum inside would lag behind the movement of the outer vessel. This differential motion triggered a simple lever mechanism. The pendulum would tilt slightly toward the direction the seismic waves came from, releasing one specific ball from one specific dragon's mouth. The ball would drop into the toad's mouth below with a loud clang, alerting observers. The result? You now knew the direction of the earthquake without feeling anything yourself. Historical records document its use. In 138 AD, one of the balls dropped, indicating an earthquake to the west.
May it guide you.
People in the capital felt nothing and were skeptical. Days later, a messenger arrived. A massive earthquake had struck Longxi, 400 miles to the west, exactly as the device predicted. Why does this matter? In a vast empire, knowing where disasters struck meant you could send aid immediately, potentially saving thousands of lives. This was emergency response technology 1900 years ago. Modern seismographs work on similar principles, detecting ground motion through suspended masses. HENG'S seismoscope was primitive by our standards, but it was functionally the same concept executed with bronze and mechanical ingenuity. No other civilization would build anything comparable for over 1,500 years. In a British museum display case sits one of the most scientifically baffling artifacts from ancient Rome, the Lycurgus cup. At first glance, it's an ornate glass cup from the 4th century AD, carved with a scene of King Lycurgus being entangled by vines. Beautiful craftsmanship, but seemingly unremarkable. Then you shine light through it. In reflected light, light bouncing off the surface, the cup appears opaque jade green, but when you shine light through the glass from behind, it glows a brilliant ruby red. The color completely transforms. For over a century after its discovery in the 1950s, this was a mystery. Glass doesn't just change color like that. Paint would wash off. Dyes wouldn't create this effect. The answer came from electron microscopy in 1990, nanoparticles. The Roman glassmakers ground gold and silver into particles roughly 50 nanometers across, about 1,000th the width of a human hair. They mixed these nanoparticles throughout the glass. At this scale, the particles don't look like gold or silver anymore. They interact with light in quantum ways. When light hits nanoparticles of this specific size, they absorb and scatter different wavelengths depending on the angle and intensity. Reflected light appears green, transmitted light appears red. This is called surface plasmon resonance, the same principle used in modern nanotechnology. Here's what's astounding. The Romans achieved a nearly uniform mixture of nanoparticles throughout thick glass. This requires incredibly precise temperature control during melting and cooling. Modern materials scientists struggle to replicate this consistency. Did Romans understand they were working with nanoparticles? Almost certainly not, but they understood the recipe empirically. They knew adding specific amounts of gold and silver heated to precise temperatures created this magical effect. Only about 50 examples of this dichroic glass survive from the Roman Empire. The technique was lost after Rome fell and wasn't rediscovered until the 1990s with electron microscopes. The Romans were doing nanotechnology 1,600 years before we had a name for it. In 1936, German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig was cataloging artifacts in Baghdad's National Museum when he noticed something strange: a 5-inch ceramic jar with a copper cylinder inside. Looking closer, he found an iron rod positioned in the center of the copper cylinder, separated by asphalt or resin. The iron rod showed signs of acid corrosion. This wasn't a storage vessel. This was a galvanic cell, a battery. If you filled the jar with an acidic electrolyte, vinegar, lemon juice, or wine, the copper and iron would react chemically, producing about 1 to 2 volts of electricity. Not much, but measurable. The immediate question: why would ancient Parthians need batteries?
Critics point out there are no ancient light bulbs, no wires, no electrical devices. Without a practical application, it's just an interesting curiosity, right? But there's one compelling explanation: electroplating. Ancient artisans created jewelry and ornaments by coating copper objects with thin layers of gold. The traditional method, hammering gold leaf onto copper, was difficult and often uneven. But with electricity, you could electroplate. Suspend a gold object and a copper object in an electrolyte solution, connect them with the battery, and gold ions would migrate through the solution, depositing evenly onto the copper. The result? A perfect, uniform gold coating. Experimenters have replicated this. Using reconstructed Baghdad batteries and ancient techniques, they successfully electroplated copper objects with gold. The quality matches ancient Parthian artifacts. The evidence supporting this theory: ancient Parthian jewelry shows unusually even, thin gold coatings. The technique disappeared when the Parthian Empire fell. Later craftsmen couldn't replicate the same quality. Many batteries were found near metalworking sites. Could ancient artisans have stumbled onto electrochemistry without understanding electrons or electricity? Absolutely. They observed, when we put this copper cylinder with iron and vinegar together and dip gold and copper objects in water with it, gold mysteriously transfers to copper. They didn't need to understand electrons, just the recipe. The Baghdad battery remains controversial. Some archaeologists argue it was just a scroll container. But the electroplating theory explains why so many were made and why ancient metalwork was so sophisticated. Whether intentionally or accidentally, ancient Parthians may have been using electrochemistry 2,000 years before Alessandro Volta invented the modern battery in 1800. In 1901, Greek sponge divers discovered a shipwreck off the coast of Antikythera Island. Among statues and pottery, they found a corroded lump of bronze that would rewrite history. After decades of cleaning and X-ray analysis, researchers realized what they had: a complex mechanical computer from ancient Greece built around 150 to 100 BC. Over 2,000 years ago. The Antikythera mechanism contained at least 30 bronze gears precisely cut to mesh together. The front face displayed multiple dials showing the position of the sun in the zodiac, the phase of the moon, the position of the 5 planets known to ancient Greeks, and a calendar showing solar and lunar cycles. The back displayed eclipse predictions. It could predict solar and lunar eclipses years in advance, and the 4-year cycle of the Olympic Games. You turned a crank on the side, and the gears calculated where celestial bodies would be on any date in the past or future. Here's why this is extraordinary. The gear ratios were mathematically precise. One gear had 223 teeth, representing the Metonic cycle, a 19-year pattern when lunar phases repeat. Another had 53 teeth for predicting eclipses. The ancient Greeks didn't just observe these cycles, they built a machine to calculate them mechanically. The sophistication is staggering. Nothing remotely this complex appears in historical records until medieval astronomical clocks 1,500 years later. The technology simply vanished. Why call it a computer? Because that's literally what it is, a machine that takes inputs, dates, performs calculations, gear ratios, and produces outputs, astronomical predictions. It's an analog computer, no electricity, just bronze and mathematics. Modern reconstructions proved it works perfectly. You can calculate eclipses, predict planetary positions, and track lunar phases with remarkable accuracy. Who built it? We don't know. The shipwreck dates to around 65 BC, but the mechanism was probably older. It was found with luxury goods heading to Rome, possibly a gift or prized possession. What's terrifying, we only know about this because it happened to sink where divers would find it 2,000 years later. How many other ancient technological marvels were lost to time? The Antikythera mechanism proves ancient Greeks weren't just philosophers. They were engineers capable of building mechanical computers that wouldn't be equaled for over a millennium. It's not an exaggeration to call it the world's first computer. It computed. Case closed.
In 1st century Alexandria, Egypt, an engineer named Hero, also called Heron, invented automated machines that wouldn't seem out of place in a modern amusement park. His most famous invention, automatic temple doors. Picture this: a priest lights a fire on an altar outside a temple. The temple doors slowly swing open by themselves, seemingly by divine intervention. Worshippers are amazed. The gods have accepted the offering. Here's how it actually worked. Beneath the altar was a sealed chamber containing air. When fire heated the altar, it heated the air below. Hot air expands. This expanding air pushed through a pipe into a sealed container of water hidden beneath the temple floor. The air pressure forced water out of one container into another hanging container. As this container grew heavier, it descended, connected by ropes and pulleys to the temple doors. The increased weight pulled the doors open. When the fire went out, everything reversed. Air cooled, pressure dropped, water siphoned back, the container rose, and doors closed. All automatic, all mechanical, no electricity required. This is early automation, using pressure, weight, levers, and hidden mechanisms to create smart behavior without human intervention or power sources. Hero documented dozens of other devices in his texts, including the world's first vending machine. You dropped a coin into a slot. The coin landed on a horizontal pan connected to a lever. The weight of the coin pushed the pan down, opening a valve. Water or wine flowed out. When the coin slid off the pan, the lever released, the valve closed, and flow stopped. Pay-per-use automated service in the 1st century AD. Automated puppet theaters, miniature stages with mechanical figures that performed entire plays automatically. Pulleys, ropes, weighted drums descending slowly like a clockwork mechanism, triggering actions in sequence. Doors opened, figures moved, scenes changed, all pre-programmed mechanically. The aeolipile. We'll cover this next.
Hero also documented other engineers' inventions: automatic door bolts, odometers measuring distance traveled, repeating crossbows. Ancient Alexandria was a hub of mechanical engineering. Why didn't these inventions spread? Several reasons. 1. They were temple secrets. Religious authorities wanted to maintain the illusion of divine power. 2. Most required skilled craftsmen and precise parts. 3. Economic structures didn't incentivize automation. More on this with the aeolipile. Hero of Alexandria proved that sophisticated automation doesn't require electricity, just understanding of physics, pressure, weight, levers, valves, and mechanical advantage. His writings survived because they were copied by Islamic scholars during the medieval period. Without them, we'd never know ancient engineers created robots powered by fire and water. Hero of Alexandria also documented a device called the aeolipile, and it's essentially a working steam turbine built 1,800 years before the Industrial Revolution. The design is elegant, a sealed sphere with two bent tubes protruding from opposite sides. The sphere sits on an axle connected to a sealed boiler beneath. Water in the boiler heats up, producing steam. Steam travels up through the hollow axle into the sphere. Steam then escapes through the bent tubes. As steam exits the tubes at high speed, it creates thrust in one direction, Newton's third law. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. The sphere spins rapidly, powered entirely by steam pressure and jet propulsion. This is the same principle behind modern jet engines and rocket propulsion. Hero built it in the 1st century AD. Let's be clear, this was a working steam turbine. It converts heat energy, burning fuel, into kinetic energy, rotational motion. That's what an engine does. Here's the big question. Why didn't this trigger an industrial revolution 1,500 years early?
If ancient Greeks could build steam turbines, why didn't they power factories, transportation, and machinery? The answer isn't technical, it's economic and social. Ancient Rome and Greece had abundant slave labor. When human workers are cheap and plentiful, expensive machines seem unnecessary. There's no economic incentive to develop labor-saving technology. Why invest in building a complex steam engine to grind grain when you can just assign more slaves? Why design a steam-powered water pump when manual labor is free? Additionally, materials science wasn't advanced enough for sustained power. The aeolipile could spin a toy, but building an engine powerful enough to run machinery required precision metal casting, high-pressure seals, and industrial-scale production, technologies that wouldn't exist for 1,500+ years. Finally, intellectual curiosity was separated from practical application. Hero and other Alexandrian engineers were viewed as philosophers and entertainers. Their inventions were temple demonstrations and amusing toys, not tools for industry. When the Library of Alexandria was destroyed and the Western Roman Empire collapsed, much of this knowledge was lost. It wasn't rediscovered and refined until the 1700s with Thomas Savery and James Watt's steam engines. The tragedy of the aeolipile. It proved steam power was possible. But without economic need and supporting infrastructure, the invention remained a curiosity for 1,800 years. This is the clearest example of a technology ahead of its time, not because the science wasn't understood, but because society wasn't ready. 6 ancient inventions that seem impossible for their time. 1. HENG'S seismoscope, detecting earthquakes 400 miles away in 132 AD. 2. The Lycurgus cup, Roman nanotechnology with 50 nanometer particles. 3. The Baghdad battery,
possible electroplating 2,000 years before Volta. 4. The Antikythera mechanism, a bronze computer predicting eclipses. 5. HERO's automata, robots powered by fire, water, and mechanical ingenuity. 6. The eolipile, a functional steam turbine 1,800 years early. These aren't myths or speculation, they're real artifacts that archaeologists studied, tested, and in many cases successfully reconstructed. So why don't we learn about these in school? Why did these technologies vanish for centuries? The pattern is clear.
Knowledge centralizes. These inventions came from major civilizations: China, Rome, Greece, Parthia, Egypt. When those civilizations fell, knowledge concentrated in libraries and elite workshops was destroyed or abandoned. Economic structures matter. The eolipile proves this perfectly. Without economic incentive, brilliant inventions remain curiosities. Transmission is fragile. Many of HERO's writings survived only because Islamic scholars copied them during the medieval period. One library fire could erase centuries of engineering knowledge. Oral traditions fail. The Baghdad battery's electroplating recipe was probably passed master to apprentice. When the Parthian metalworking tradition ended, the knowledge vanished. The lesson? Human progress isn't linear. We don't constantly advance. We stumble, we forget, we rediscover. Right now, our technological knowledge exists primarily in digital form. How much would survive if our civilization collapsed? How many could rebuild a computer from scratch? How many know the chemistry of making batteries or glass? Ancient inventors weren't primitive. They were brilliant engineers working with the materials and knowledge available. They pushed boundaries, created wonders, and sometimes anticipated technologies we wouldn't rediscover for thousands of years. These 6 inventions prove our ancestors deserve far more credit than we give them. Which ancient invention shocked you most? Did you know about any of these before? And what other ancient technologies do you think we've underestimated? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe to Find Historical for more deep dives into ancient technology and forgotten knowledge. The past was far more advanced than you think.